Today, VP Harris made a play for people who have voted for Republicans. Do you think this strategy is working? Is this the kind of critical work she should be doing in the last few days?
100%. Listen, I really feel in the last 48 hours like the political wheel has turned and shifted. It was a terrific performance. Let me just read you a quote about it. She was combative and energetic and certainly landed some blows on Donald Trump. That was Brit Hume, Fox reporter. Let me give you another one. She had a mission. She wanted to go after Donald Trump and create a viral moment. She may have gotten that. That was from Bret Baier, the guy who did the reporter who did the interview. The most important thing, Stephanie, is she looks strong and confident. Whether or not the viewers, whether or not she changed any viewers' minds on Fox is really not even relevant. The point is that she went into the lion's den confident and strong. And even if you disagree with her, being wrong and strong, as Clinton said, is better than being weak and right. Right now, she looks strong and Trump looks weak.
Let's talk about this interview, because people are going to see whatever they want to see out of it. But what she showed is that she's capable and she's unafraid. And what is Donald Trump doing this week? Only interviews and forums with a very friendly audience. He's dancing on stage for 39 minutes. He's canceling on 60 Minutes. He's canceling on CNBC, and he's turning down the debate.
Right. He is trying to, it's interesting what he's trying to do. He's trying to both be within his comfort zone and yet also show that he's willing to break out, but not really being good at it. It's fascinating. When he went on Univision to try to win over a Latino audience, he did so by trying to soften his tone on immigration, saying, oh, we want legal immigrants only, trying to appeal to a swath of the Latino community that thinks, oh, well, my people came over legally. Why isn't everyone else? Why are Haitian migrants that I'm hearing about, or as Trump tries to pit communities against each other? But legal immigration fell under his watch. People who advise him, like Stephen Miller, are against lots of forms of legal immigration. They only want immigration from certain parts of the world, namely Europe. So for him to claim that he's in favor of legal immigration, to try to soften his tone, I'm hoping that it doesn't work, considering how much evidence we have to the contrary.
Victoria, let's first talk about that TV interview. The stunning or disheartening thing is people are going to hear, people are going to see whatever they want to see, no matter what happened in that interview. But what was your take?
She is battle tested. So to Mark's point, she went into the lion's den, and you may not agree with the words she said, but she was strong and she held her own. And you know what? Appearances matter. And we also know that voters also like to attach on to charisma, to strength, something that Donald Trump has touted, one of the reasons why he connects with people. And I think that with Kamala Harris, my other takeaway, aside from that, was she's getting angry. And I wanted to see that anger. I want joy, but I want anger. As humans, we all have a mix of emotion. And that joyousness that we saw during the convention is great, but we need to counter punch. We know that anxiety is something that is coming out of the Republican campaign, and Democrats need to be able to counter punch on that. So I think that bit of anger was the biggest take home for me.
Mark, you were a Republican for a very, very long time. You know Fox News very well. Watching that interview, thinking about the days of Roger Ailes, can you believe that here we are 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks before the election, and a black female vice president of the United States sat there on Fox News, maybe weeks away from becoming the next president? I mean, that's pretty extraordinary.
Listen, it would have been extraordinary 10 years ago in a less partisan time. But during an era when, that it's being sued left and right for being in the bag for Trump, the network is. And so it just showed enormous confidence and strength. And that's the most important perception the voters have as a president. All the campaigns I did for president, no matter where people are on the issues, the attribute, which is the most important thing that people vote on for president, is strength. So, that was Biden's problem, and a lot of it had to do with age, but he was seen as weak. Whatever you say about Kamala Harris, and today just reinforced it in so many ways. She is strong and unafraid. And so I think even a number of viewers in the Fox audience looked at that and said, wow, she's got a lot of moxie and no fear, which is what you want to see in a president.
Then, and we're going to move on, but then, Mark, what position does that put Donald Trump in, right? I keep hearing the words like confident, strong, unafraid, right? How boxed in is he, the kid who keeps canceling?
Yeah, well, that's why it's also really smart, because just psychologically, Trump was already going crazy about the fact that they even did the interview in the first place. And now that she did it and she did so well, that he's just going to be, circling the drain right now. And to your point, all he's doing are friendly audiences with handpicked Trump supporters. And he's made clear that he doesn't want to debate again. That shows weakness, not confidence. And so, that's why I said I just feel like the political ground is shifting right now. And Harris, to Victoria's point, is on offense, and I like it a lot. She's keeping the hammer down right when she needs to.
People were saying she was losing momentum. Well, she certainly picked it up today. Let's talk about this event that Trump had focused on women voters. At this event, he took credit for overturning Roe. He falsely called himself the father of IVF. And then he went on and on talking about how attractive he finds Senator Katie Britt. Victoria, are there any women persuadable voters that Donald Trump could possibly be winning over? Or the women who are voting for him going to vote for him no matter what he says? Because I'm watching him in that room thinking, is there anybody in there going, I'm in it now?
I think maybe there were a handful of women who were looking for a reason to justify why they would cast a vote for Donald Trump. Maybe they can hang their hat on the states' rights piece, right? So we know states' rights, states' rights, states' rights. And this was really what I took home from the Trump town hall with women, that it's not that he's necessarily against these rights. It's that it's not the federal government's business. The other thing that I thought was so interesting was how he was pulling in Ronald Reagan, right? So Ronald Reagan was the shield as well. So he was trying to soften. And I think for the couple of women who are looking for the excuse to say, I can still say I'm pro-choice or for women's reproductive rights, but I really want to vote for Trump, I think he gave them that during the town hall.
Hayes, I got two for you. The first, this event that VP Harris did with 100 Republicans in Pennsylvania. Do you think any of these moves risk her alienating those further on the left?
Honestly, yes, that is a risk that the Harris campaign has decided.
But where are they going to go?
That's the thing. They can stay home is the thing. The problem that Harris has right now is that she's trying to figure out what is her coalition, what is the slice of the electorate in these key states that I need to win. And getting to that point is what's most important right now for her. She's trying to figure out, okay, how do I balance the never Trump Republicans with the calls to address black men's economic concerns? How do I balance out talking about just straight the economy and inflation?
How do I win business people over without infuriating AOC and the threat of getting rid of Lena Khan?
Exactly. So she's trying to figure out where she can get her take losses and for what gains, and that is like the biggest math problem that they're trying to solve right now. This formula solving for X of how many voters they need to get a solid coalition to win.
What did you think of the point she made on Fox, where she made it clear? And I hadn't heard her be this clear on this point before, where she said her presidency would not be a continuation of Joe Biden's.
I make of it that she's trying to win this election. I think one of the things, no, I mean it. I think that one of the things that we've been seeing from the Harris campaign is win first, figure out everything else later. I remember seeing a quote just today. What is Kamala Harris's economic policy? People saying around her saying she doesn't really know what she is going to be doing once she's there, how she's going to change things up from Biden, what policies she is specifically going to pursue outside of those that have already been proposed. What
She
her economic
also doesn't
vision
need, okay, we have to remember She's not running for president when we're in a time of economic crisis,
Yes.
right? We're in an economic recovery. Under the Biden-Harris administration, there have been 4 major pieces of legislation passed, all that are deeply tied to the economy. So it's hardly like we have a failing healthcare system where you need to rip it up and present Obamacare. We're not necessarily in need of that for people who are looking for these major moves.
And that's part of the challenge of her trying to make a sales pitch, is saying, well, I'm not going to be Biden, but things are going well. So how do you cross over those two things? She's doing her best right now to try and weave those two messages of change and continuity to the point that she can actually get to the White House and make a difference.
Mark McKinnon, Kamala Harris is focused on these Nikki Haley voters. How do you persuade these Nikki Haley voters? In my mind, the person who has the greatest probability of persuading those voters would be Nikki Haley herself. Where is she? She said she's voting for Donald Trump, but I don't see her on the campaign trail trying to help him.
No, listen, I think that she is playing a long game. And the long game that she's playing is that she thinks that if Donald Trump loses and loses badly, that she'll be standing there saying, I'm the resurrection. And she's not going to be the resurrection and she's not going to get those MAGA voters that she'll need to rebuild the Republican Party if she goes out and endorses Harris. But her voters get the trick. I mean, that's why 20% of them either voted for Haley or didn't vote for Donald Trump in those primaries. So that's a huge part of that electorate. And I think that gender gap that Harris has right now, which is up to 16 points right now, which is much stronger than Trump's male gender gap, is in part due to those Haley voters. I mean, Haley may be not taking the courageous route that Liz Cheney is, but her voters are. Her voters are standing up even though she's sitting down.